Okay, our next speaker is Jake LaTurner. Jake is our state treasurer at this time. He was elected to the Senate, in Kansas Senate, as the youngest senator. And so Jake won the primary in August and against Steve Watkins, and he's going to represent us well. Jake?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and thank you all for being here today. I know that there are a lot of other things you could be doing with your time, and the fact that you came out here today shows that you care and you understand how important this election is. And as I was telling some of you before this started, it got a lot more important just recently, didn't it? How many of you are undecided in the presidential election, by the way? Yeah, I didn't think so. I think we've got some good, strong Trump supporters here in this crowd, and you understand how important it is. And so what I want to talk about today is what we can do to help along the conservative Trump agenda in Washington, D.C. And I think what we can do is encourage our family and encourage our friends, encourage our neighbors to go out and vote in November. And that might sound like, well, sure, Jake, but it really is critical. And I know it can be sometimes uncomfortable to talk to people about politics or encourage them to get out. But it is absolutely critical that, of course, we elect Donald Trump, that we make certain, my goodness, don't we need a Republican Senate? Need to maintain it. We need to make sure Roger Marshall is elected. We need to keep the 2nd Congressional District in Republican hands. We need to win back the Kansas City district that was lost to a Democrat. We need to make sure that we have folks like Dina. Where's Dina? I just saw her. Well, make sure that we elect good people to the State Board of Education. I know we have Kevin running for the County Commission. We need to make sure we elect good, solid candidates up and down the ballot. When we look at what's on the ballot, and President Trump talked about this so well just a few weeks ago, what's on the ballot here is a foreign policy that we should be so proud is led by Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo from Kansas, that are doing an excellent job making sure that people around this world understand where America stands. And Donald Trump doesn't just say things, but he actually does them, like moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the Golan Heights, coming up with a creative way to put pressure on the Palestinians from other Arab nations. How about what a wonderful job that they've been doing with our foreign policy? He's been a check on China. He has stood firm on Russia. We should be very proud of this, and it's critical that we have somebody in there that is going to be firm and let people know where we stand. Deregulation that has been the effort has been led by Vice President Pence, has been wonderful. The tax cuts have been stimulative to this economy. And by the way, we need to remind the Democrats in Washington, D.C., the way we had the strongest economy ever before COVID was tax cuts and deregulation. We cannot borrow money from China and spend it back into prosperity. It's not going to work that way. We need tax cuts, we need deregulation. And we also need to be so proud of the judicial nominees that President Trump has put forward. I think the Senate, Mitch McConnell, say what you want about Mitch McConnell, he has done one heck of a job confirming conservative judges and justices to the Supreme Court. And I think it's critical that we take this opportunity and perform the duty that these folks were elected to do, which is nominate a justice to the Supreme Court and the Senate confirm them. And I pray that it happens quickly and swiftly, and that Republicans don't get weak-kneed on us, and make sure we go straight ahead and get this done. I'm asking for your vote because this election is so critical, I think, for Republicans in Kansas. Democrats, as I mentioned earlier, won the congressional district that used to be represented by Kevin Yoder this last election. And in the Senate race, Roger Marshall is going to win that race, but Democrats have raised millions and millions and millions of dollars to put money into Kansas. And let me tell you something, the money's not coming from Kansas, it's coming from the coasts. My opponent is the mayor of Topeka, Michelle De La Isla. She was handpicked by Nancy Pelosi. She has had fundraisers with people like Elizabeth Warren. She had one, I kid you not, with Adam Schiff on Monday night this week. Martin Sheen, the actor, sent out a fundraising solicitation for my opponent. They really think that they can turn Kansas into a purple state. And I think it's critical that this election, we stand up tall and say, no, that's not going to happen. And it leads me back to my first point. It is critical that you, if it is outside of your comfort zone, some of you this will come very easy for. But for those of you that's out of your comfort zone, please encourage your family and your friends to get out and vote. It matters so much. It's critical. There's yard signs in the back. Do everything you can to support candidates up and down the ballot. This is the election. It matters more than ever. And I really do thank you for being here today and having me. And I'd be happy, Ray. First of all, give Ray and the leadership team a round of applause for putting this together. I think Ray's doing a great job with the party here. Our state party chair, Mike Kuckelman, is doing a great job with the state party. You have a lot to be proud of, I think, as Republicans in Kansas right now. I will take a few questions if you have any for me. Be happy to talk about anything you want to or any comments you might have. Mike.
I hate to ask you, but I haven't seen it long. There's one burning issue you didn't touch on. Your opponent is Mayor of Topeka, and she's bragging that she has already started cutting funding to the Topeka Police Department. With all these people talking about defunding the police, Jake, where are you on police? I know you're not in favor of defunding, but kind of walk us through the comparison and contrast of what we look like, you versus her.
Yeah, it's critical that we stand up shoulder to shoulder next to law enforcement in this country who are putting their lives on the line, putting themselves in harm's way to make sure that we live in a civil society. And, you know, we've seen the tragedy in Minnesota that started all of this was awful. And is there a bad apple or two in law enforcement? Sure. Just like there is in every profession under the sun. And when we find a bad apple, let's deal with it. But we can't let a bad apple or two define an entire profession. These are wonderful people. And what I'm really concerned with are young people that are looking to go into law enforcement and now thinking differently about it because the way we see law enforcement vilified in the media every night. So I think it's critical that we aren't just neutral on this issue, but that we actually stand up and say something. The mayor of Topeka said that defund the police was a bad marketing term, but they've been doing it in Topeka for the last 2 years, before this was ever an issue that was being discussed. She is somebody that has been endorsed by Planned Parenthood and funded by Planned Parenthood. She is someone that at a mayor's conference at the federal level endorsed the Green New Deal, which would put agriculture, that would put the energy and the oil and gas industry out of business. It would shut down the Kansas economy and put millions of people out of work across this country. And she supports it. It makes complete sense that when you have someone like Nancy Pelosi putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into this congressional race, she's going to want something for that money. She's going to want something for that money. And so we have to make sure that we stand up and beat her. And when we have a nation that is $26.5 trillion in debt, on an annual basis we bring in about $3.5 trillion and spend $4.5 trillion. People are walking the halls of Congress talking about socialism, talking about infanticide. This isn't just a time to send Republicans to Washington, D.C., but we need people that are going to stand up and lead on these issues. And that's what I've done. I received an A+ from the NRA because I actually carried constitutional carry. I won the Pro-Life Hero Award from Kansans for Life because I carried Simon's Law that puts parents in charge of their children's health care decisions. I introduced welfare reform in the state that we got passed. I introduced property tax reform that we got passed. The point being is that we need people that are going to actively stand up and lead in Washington, D.C. to fix some of these problems. I assure you, Michelle Daley Isla wants to take us down a path that we definitely don't want to go down. Another question or comment real quick. Yes, please.
How big is your district? How many counties?
Part of or all of 25 counties. Goes all the way to the Oklahoma border, to the Nebraska border. It is basically the three most eastern counties up and expands in the north part, but obviously doesn't include Johnson County and Wyandotte County. Yeah, Ray.
Okay, as far as getting elected and then taking your position there in the House, what committees would you be looking at to hopefully hold?
That's a great question. A committee that I've been very interested in is Energy and Commerce. It covers a whole host of issues, ranging from obviously the energy sector, which is critical. It is a business-oriented community where we focus on making sure that the government is giving business a fair shake, whether it be through regulatory policy or otherwise. And so that's one. I've also said that it is vital that Kansas be represented on the Agriculture Committee. Typically, that seat is filled from the senator from Western Kansas, which Roger Marshall serves on now, and I think Tracy Mann would sure arm wrestle me to get on the Agriculture Committee now. But what I've said is that if ever we find ourselves in a place where we're not represented on the Agriculture Committee, I'll drop whatever I'm doing to make sure we are. And it hasn't been that long ago where we weren't represented. And so ag is a big deal as well. And so we'll see. The way it works is, I've just learned this recently, is that you have to fill out, as a freshman going in, you have to fill out your top 5 choices and then see what happens. Something like Energy Commerce is considered an A committee. And so you might not get it on in your first term. And so it's just, I'm learning a lot about the Washington's a little bit different than the State House in Topeka, I'm learning. But we're learning, and after Election Day, we're going to do everything we can to make sure you're well represented in the halls of Congress. Yeah, last question. Go ahead.
All right, you talked about the $26 trillion.
Yeah.
What's your plan to cut spending, reduce the growth, because that's what they love to do. You've got to have this constant growth of spending, irrespective of a plan every year, whatever that's called, plan every year. Put up that budget. It's irrelevant. We have a spending problem. So how do we go about, or do you have any ideas on how you can reduce the growth of spending? Because we're always going to have growth. Can we reduce it?
Yes. And the first step is to acknowledge the problem, which might sound obvious to us out here in Kansas, but in Washington, D.C., we have to be honest about this. Both parties have spent like drunken sailors. Now, the Democrats a little worse, but we've done it as a party as well. And it is critical that we rein this in. Suzanne and I have 4 young kids, and I think we are duty-bound, and you all behave like this in your personal life, I'm sure of it. We are all duty-bound to try to leave the campground better than we found it. And I think this is the big problem that we have to address. In the mid-90s, they were 1 vote shy of a balanced budget amendment in the United States Senate. And so I think that's critical. We have to pass a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution to make certain that we get this $1 trillion deficit every year back on track. And the way you go about doing this is twofold. Number one, you have to make sure that you aren't afraid to tackle excesses in government. And you have to be straight with the people that not every decision is going to be popular, not every decision is going to be easy. But that's what I'm prepared to do, and I've proven that I'm willing to do it. When I became, I'll tell you 2 quick stories. When I became state treasurer, we looked everywhere in the office to find ways that we can provide you a better quality service and do it in a more efficient way. So we went about, we reduced the staff through attrition. We reduced our budget overall. We looked for ways to save. One example, we racked our own servers, our own computer servers, and it takes air-conditioned space. It can be expensive sometimes. It costs the state about $60,000 a year to do this. We moved our server up 1 flight of stairs to rack them with other state servers, and it cost less than $10,000 a year. When I was on the Transportation Committee in the State Senate, we had a senator come to us and say, hey, we need a stop sign with a flashing light at this intersection in my district. It's dangerous. And just in perfect government fashion, the committee, against my wishes, said, well, let's study it. And so we come back a year later, and in that year's time, there had been an accident at that intersection involving the senator's daughter. And again, KDOT came back and said, there's no need to have a flashing light there. It doesn't merit it. Well, I think that the people elected him. I think he knew what needed to be in his district better than bureaucrats in Topeka did. So the committee said, do it. We're going to build it. That's fine. And I'm so glad I asked the question at the end of the hearing. I said, how much does it cost to put the stop signs with the flashing lights? And they told me $3,000. And then I asked, how much did you spend on the study? And I still have the memo today. It was over $25,000 to study the intersection. My point being is that people that tell you there aren't places to cut, significant places to cut in government, they are not being honest with you. You can do it. The way Congress does it is, we are the appropriators. Congress is the appropriators. It is their job to hold department heads accountable and make certain that we find savings. It can absolutely be done. You saw Rand Paul introduce the penny plan a few years ago. Cut 1 penny out of every dollar in federal spending and we could balance the budget in like 7 or 10 years, something like that. Now it has to be the 2 penny plan because they didn't pass it. But the point is that they said we can't do that. There's no way to cut 1 penny out of every dollar spent at the federal level. That's crazy. That's crazy. And so we have to be honest about it. We can't be afraid to look for ways to find it. And we have to tell voters that not every decision that gets us in balance is going to be popular. Thank you very much for having me. Do you have another question, Rick?
So would you propose a freeze on all spending?
No, it's more than that. You have to find savings in every department. You can't just free spending, and you need an economy that is growing. You need people out working. You need the economy to be opened up. You need, as I said earlier, you need regulations to be as low as possible. You need people to have the incentive to go work because they can keep more of their hard-earned money. That's how you get this done. But for too long now, we, as a nation, have sent people to Washington, D.C. that are completely focused on the next election. They never want to make a tough vote because they care more about protecting their power in Washington, D.C. than they do about getting something done at the end of the day. And that's what we have to change. Thank you all very much. God bless you, and thank you for coming here.